Among the prophets of Samaria I saw this repulsive thing. They prophesied by Baal and led my people Israel astray. And among the prophets of Jerusalem I have seen something horrible. They commit adultery and live a lie. They strengthen the hands of evildoers so that not one of them turns from their wickedness. They are all like Sodom to me. The people of Jerusalem are like Gomorrah. Therefore this is what the Lord Almighty says concerning the prophets. I will make them eat bitter food and drink poison water, because from the prophets of Jerusalem ungodliness has spread throughout the land. This is what the Lord Almighty says. Do not listen to what the prophets are prophesying to you. They fill you with false hopes. They speak visions from their own minds, not from the mouth of the Lord.
Please, I need to know what's going on.
Dispatch.
Oh my God.
Everything is just fine here. No need to call anyone.
Yes, Father. Praise be to you.
No one is coming to save you.
Bold words for someone within shovel-smacking range.
Let me think about this for a second.
Doing the Lord's work. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and heretics of all ages. Welcome back to Larks Lamentations, where we dissect the factions from fiction with more effort than the factions rightfully deserve. And today, we have a special project to go over, that being Project Eden's Gate. That's right, the cult from Far Cry 5. I've been waiting to do this one for a while. Heck, I've even referenced it in my first Lamentations. The reason is simple. I hate Eden's Gate, but in a good way. Okay, I know that's confusing, allow me to explain. Eden's Gate is kind of like Caesar's Legion. They're so twisted and evil that purging them in holy fire, it's not just work, it's a pleasure. Which is funny. I actually thought I was going to hate Eden's Gate from Far Cry for entirely different reasons. When the game was first announced and I heard that the game was taking place in the rural United States with religious extremists, I did not have high hopes, as I thought this would just be another attempt to knock on Christianity and rural Americans. But to my pleasant surprise, Eden's Gate shares very little with Christianity. It is an evil cult that only has a few references to Christianity, and we'll go over those later. Honestly, I don't think they mention Jesus once. Regardless of that, these cultists are ironically heretics of the highest caliber. But don't worry, we'll cover all of that. First, we need to look into the history of the cult and its founders. Because to understand the cult, you must understand the leader, Joseph Seed. Joseph Seed grew up in Georgia with his two brothers, Jacob and John. The Seed brothers had the misfortune of being born into an abusive family, with all of the boys getting beat on the regular.
You little turning a sweet little bitch.
But these beatings were so harsh that Joseph started to hear a voice. While he was being beaten like a redheaded stepchild, eventually Child Protective Services stepped in because of all the beatings and separated the boys from the family and each other. You think they would try and keep the brothers together, but yeah, okay, government fails again. Shocker, I know.
Government can't do shit.
Regardless, Joseph was shipped from foster family to foster family. No place did he really ever fit in. He had no friends but the voice inside his head. Eventually, when Joseph grew up, he moved on to getting odd jobs here and there and learning more about religion along the way, or what he thought was learning about religion. Eventually, Joseph started to associate the voice with God himself. However, paranoid delusions of grandeur aside, we're going to have to look at something else. Because at some point, he actually got married to a woman named Faith. No, not her. She'll be later. We'll get to her later. Patience. But anyway, it seems with his marriage to Faith, Joseph was finally getting something of a normal life. Faith truly seemed to help Joseph stay grounded in reality. Anytime Joseph started to worry about the future or have doubts about how things were going, Faith was there to reassure him. She truly did live up to her name and was a blessing to Joseph and his mental health. At the same time, though, Joseph and Faith began to prepare to bring a child into the world. Faith was pregnant with a baby girl. Sadly, though, tragedy struck. Faith was killed in a car crash with their daughter, and the daughter, though, was pulled from the wound and survived, but she was on heavy life support. Joseph was brought in to be in the same room as his newborn, where he just stared at his daughter and the machinery that kept her alive. It was in that moment he decided this was a test from the voice. So Joseph did the most logical thing he could think of and snuffed out the life of his own daughter so he could understand sacrifice.
And they left me alone in the room with her. I just stared at my daughter. So helpless, so innocent. When all she had in the world was me. When nobody from nowhere was nothing. And in that moment, I knew that God was testing me. He was laying out a path before me, and all I had to do was choose. So I put my hand on my little girl's head, and I leaned in and I could smell her. And we prayed together. Prayed for wisdom. Prayed for strength. And I knew. I heard God's plan for me. So I took my fingers and I put them on that little plastic tube that was taped to her angelic face, and I pinched it shut. And after a little while, her legs began to kick in and kick. And then nothing. Stillness. Release.
Oh, good Lord! Hey, dude, I know you've been looking into religion a good bit over the years, but maybe you should try reading, the Bible. Good. I think it has some good lessons in here. Turns out you can follow God without killing your child. Do not start with Revelations. No, bad. You start with one of the Gospels. Hey, are you even listening to me, Joseph? All right, let's be real. In all honesty, Joseph's infanticide is probably him trying to psychologically cope with the fact his wife died. By basically him justifying the death of his loved ones as a sacrifice to the voice, he can make peace with his wife passing away, and he won't have to keep his crippled child around as a constant reminder of his wife being gone. Essentially, he gives it all meaning. But you could do that without killing an innocent child. Just saying. After that, Joseph headed back to Georgia, trying to take on more odd jobs and to find his brothers. While in Georgia, Joseph was jumped by 3 dudes outside of a psych ward. After he got his ass handed to him, he received his final message from the voice, informing him of the coming apocalypse. So the man gets his ass beat once and he wants the world to end. Drama queen! Anyway, after this point, he manages to find all of his brothers. Well, both of his brothers. You know what I mean. Anyway, he finds John, who went on to become a successful real estate attorney with sadistic and masochistic tendencies. Okay, and Jacob was suffering from PTSD after his time in the airborne.
I've seen some things, man, and some stuff. I wouldn't recommend it.
But that wasn't going to deter Joseph. Joseph brought his family back together and onto his side because of his vision. With his brothers by his side, Joseph would form Eden's Gate in Georgia. And for some time, the cult grew under Joseph, now labeled the Father. Now, eventually, though, the cult, despite the cult actually growing quite large because it sort of fed on the disenfranchised and those who had found themselves struggling in life, and he sort of corralled them in under his wing. Eventually, though, the cult was put under police investigation because people were starting to disappear. To avoid trouble and to prepare for the collapse, their term for the apocalypse, Eden's Gate relocated to Hope County, Montana because of its remote location, defensibility, and... Really? They just like the name? Really, Joey?
Let's be honest here. I don't always think my decisions through.
This is how your thought process... Okay, never mind. Anyway, now when the Peggies first moved to Hope County, things seemed okay. Sure, the cult was a little kooky, but everyone thought they were harmless. Heck, some of the county residents were even hopeful that they might make the county a little bit better with their presence.
Everyone thought they'd make things better here.
That last prediction might not have aged quite so well. You see, as time passed, the cult started to come off as more and more malevolent. The members of Eden's Gate would cut themselves off from the rest of the world using strange recruiting tactics, including the use of drugs and psychological conditioning. The cult was stockpiling weapons. The Peggies, as they started to be called, were constantly scouting out places in the county. John himself used the wealth and legal training that he acquired in Georgia to take ownership of large amounts of land in the county. It didn't help that the members of the cult looked unkempt and deranged. I mean, seriously, look at these guys. Does this look like a healthy psychological individual to you? No, sir. Even worse, though, the cult started employing psychologically broken drug addicts or angels to do their heavy lifting. It became clear to the residents of Hope County that they didn't just want to live in Hope County, they wanted to own it. Eventually, the cult started butting heads with other religious organizations as well, such as Pastor Jerome's church, and it's not hard to understand why. At first glance, Eden's Gate might look Christian. They share some iconography with Christianity, and they even use some Bible verses, not a lot, but some. But let's not get it twisted. This cult is not Christian. They may claim to be, but they are not Christian. Like I said earlier, Jesus is not mentioned once in-game. That is not where their salvation is found. Emphasis is, if your cult, or rather your religious organization, is claiming to be Christian, but it's placing its emphasis on anywhere other than Jesus, that's a red flag. The cult places its emphasis on Joseph as the father.
Joseph Seed.
They call him the Father.
That is not the will of the Father.
And then she met the Father.
Yes, Father. Praise be to you.
I thank you for choosing me and giving me the responsibility to protect these sinners who don't understand us yet. They will come to realize we're trying to protect them. I pity them because their minds are so closed off.
Massive, massive red flag. This is a sign of a false prophet, but we'll get into more of this nitty-gritty of what false prophecy means there. Because here's the thing. Make sure if you're trying to be in a Christian denomination of any kind, make sure that denomination is serving God the Father, not some Joseph wannabe father. Seriously, Joseph has huge delusions of grandeur, including the fact he made a massive idol of himself in the Henbane River Valley. Heck, his Bible is called the Book of Joseph.
Place your hand upon the word of Joseph.
We are reaching levels of heresy that should not be possible. The Inquisition has been alerted and is en route.
Just lay the exterminatus upon these heretics.
All right, fire!
Now, back to the story. As the cult became more powerful, they started to draw more attention, eventually to the point where the government sent in an undercover cop to investigate the Seeds and their cult. This cop was found out by the Seed family and blinded by Joseph himself with his own bare hands, and he was not heard from again. This prompted the federal marshals to send one of their agents to rally the Hope County Sheriff's Office to arrest Joseph Seed, which brings us to the start of the game. You are one of the officers sent to arrest Joseph. Now, you have a choice to refuse. and just leave, which is smart, considering, there's 5 of you here, and Lord knows how many Peggies there are. However, if you want to listen to the Marshal, which in general is just a poor decision, this is not a man who knows what he's doing with his life. You start kicking off what the Peggies believe is the collapse, aka the apocalypse. Joseph declares his failed arrest to be a sign of the end times and the opening of one of the first seals mentioned in Revelations, and he commands his followers to begin reaping Hope County.
Everything is unfolding according to God's plan. I am still here with you. The first seal has been broken. The collapse has begun. And we will take what we need. We will preserve what we have. And we will kill all those who stand in our way. And these, the harbingers of doom, will see the truth. We gotta get out of here. Begin the reaping!
Oh, by the way, for those of you that aren't in the know, reaping is code for steal, kidnap, torture, and kill your way across the county. While the 3 heralds, Joseph's siblings, of the cult set up shop across the county in their own unique and twisted ways, leaving you, yes you, to organize a resistance and fight back against an obvious false prophet.
We need to build us a resistance.
So, let's break down each sibling's operation and what's wrong with it. We will start with John.
Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you hypocrites. As it is written, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules. You have let go of the commands of God and are holding on to human traditions. And he continued, you have a fine way of setting aside the commands of God in order to observe your own traditions.
John is an interesting fellow. He is the main recruiter of the cult and arguably, aside from Joseph, is the most important member of the cult. John is a real estate lawyer and a very wealthy one at that. His legal trading and finances are what allowed the cult to get as powerful as they are today. The guns and equipment were bought with his money. The cult's property, his legal training acquired it. The crazy torture, his sadomasochism.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, okay, I should explain that last one. When John was separated from his brothers, he was put into a family that was very religious, and also clearly hadn't read the Bible very much. See, they tortured John into making him confess his sins, even when he didn't have any to confess, like he had run out of sins to confess. Because of this, John developed a thing for torture, and on the giving and receiving end. He's a generous guy like that, what can we say?
The best gift isn't the one you get, it's the one you give.
But this also influenced his ideas about confession. John and the cult have a weird view of how sins are forgiven. First, you must be baptized in bliss-infused water. Then you have to confess your sins. Once you have confessed your sins to John, he will tattoo your sin, typically one of the 7 deadly sins, on your body. Once he's finished tattooing it, he will take a knife and cut the sin and peel it off your body, and then he will staple the flesh sign on some surface to dry.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
While yes, you do have to confess your sins before the Lord, you don't need to rip your own skin off to be atoned. In the Christian tradition, the price for your atonement has already been paid. Jesus' death on the cross was paid. That is the price for salvation. Sin has been overcome. Death has lost its stings. Ephesians 1:7. In him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sin in accordance with the riches of God's grace. So yeah, pick up a Bible and read a chapter that doesn't belong in Revelations. You might learn something, fellas. Anyway, the worst part about John's plan is that he forces people to do this. He and his followers abduct people from Hope County and force them to confess.
You will confess every sin you've ever committed, no matter how petty, no matter how small. I will pull from you.
Here's the thing. You cannot force someone into the arms of God. It has to be their choice. Conversion by the sword is not a genuine conversion. What's hilarious about John, though, is his harsh methods are incredibly counterintuitive. You see, his methods of sadistic tendencies have turned the majority of Hope County's population against him and the cult.
Fucking Peggies.
Even before the actions of the game, his harsh real estate seizures were already rubbing people the wrong way. Once the kidnappings began, it only made it worse. Plus, consider the following. You are kidnapping all of the people to put them into a bunker to wait out nuclear annihilation. Tensions between the people inside the bunker are already going to be high, thanks to them being sealed off from the outside world, and the fact that several of them were forced there against their will. They're going to try and resist in some way. Which could lead to early exposure to radioactive fallout. Not a good idea. But let's say, hypothetically, you are able to corral them for longer periods of time. Once you get out, they're going to be uncooperative and try and run off and do their own thing, which could lead to even more violence, coups, and whatever else you have. If you're going to shove people into enclosed space, particularly to wait out a fallout, you're going to want them to be on your side. But the thing is, there's no way that's going to happen. Joseph himself even chastises John for being too harsh, and that his heavy hand is only emboldening resistance against him and the cult. Rich coming from Joseph, I know, but this is a rare moment of intelligence coming from the man.
After all the atonements, all the confessions, all that you've done for me and Eden's Gate, it's not enough. Is it, John? Cast away your past. You need to open up your heart. You need to see that there is more love all around you. All the pain and suffering you spread will not help us in the long run. These actions will only feed the sin inside you. It will grow stronger. It will convince you to do wicked things.
Days like this make it worth living in hope.
Those you scar too deeply, they will heal. They will become carriers of your sin. They will spread that sin to others. I've seen your death in a vision.
Quiet. Too much time to think, too much
You're
time
destined to be slayed by your own sin. It will come back around in a new form. It's only a matter of when. I've seen you die young. I've seen you die old. The difference between the two outcomes is how much love you let into your heart.
Some folks build bunkers underground.
I pray that you hear these words before it's too late. I want to see you become an old man in the paradise we prepared for. I love you, brother. I love you.
Fitting, though, John's demise comes from him not taking no for an answer. Seriously, after 3 times of me telling you to piss off, you should probably just kill me.
What if Joseph is right? Did you ever stop to think about that?
My brother in Christ, I am literally making a video about why he's wrong. I have, of course, thought about it.
Everyone thinks he's crazy, but he's not.
Yeah, because you're a great judge of character.
Look around you. This world is on the brink. You can feel it in your bones. Look at the headlines. Look who's in charge.
Buddy, we made it through the crisis of the 3rd century, the Black Death, and 2 world wars. I think you're gonna need a better case for the end times.
You want this key? Because you think you're saving people, but they are already safe. We had a plan.
And how's that working out for you?
You don't understand. You don't believe. You don't care!
If I didn't care, I wouldn't be doing this.
May God have mercy on your soul.
Considering your deeds, I would worry about yourself first. Well, that's one down. Now let's over to the River Valley to bust the drug operation run by the second harbinger, Faith.
For such people are false apostles, deceitful workers masquerading as apostles of Christ. And no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. It is not surprising, then, if his servants also masquerade as servants of righteousness. Their end will be what their actions deserve.
Now we're on to Faith. I can deal with arguably the saddest of the Seed family. To start off, Faith's name is not actually Faith. It's Rachel. I bet you'll never guess where he came up with the name for Faith. But anyway, Rachel was a resident of Hope County. Ironically, she's the only member of the Seed family that is a Hope County native. But the thing is, she is a poor girl that just happened to find herself falling on hard times. She got caught up with the wrong crowd and started getting into drugs.
There once was a young woman who had been ostracized by her community, bullied by friends, abused by her family. She took to a needle for help. She was all alone. She wanted to die.
I can fix that.
Eventually, she fell into the arms of Eden's Gate, who kind of offered her what she thought was a way out.
He gave her hope and confidence. The Father showed her how special she was. She was full of love and life. He gave her a new family, one that accepted her just as she was.
You see, Joseph saw Rachel as clay he could mold into whatever shape he wished. So through physical abuse, psychological conditioning, and a whole hell of a lot of substance abuse, Rachel became Faith, even forgetting her old name as a slave to Joseph. And his drug, Bliss. And to make matters even more screwed up, Rachel is not the first Faith. No, I'm not referring to his wife either. Joseph has run through several faiths. The one you fight in game is just the most recent iteration. And also, coincidentally, Joseph's favorite, because Joseph finally had what he wanted from Rachel, a mocking representation of his deceased wife, and now the head of the cult's Bliss operation.
My faith. She was not the first to carry that name, but she was the most devoted. She was like many of you when she came to me. Broken. Lost. I put my faith inside her. And she became angelic. Perfect. And those sinners took her away from us.
You're goddamn right.
Now, some of you that have not played through the game might be wondering what the heck Bliss is, because I've referred to it a few times. Bliss is a drug developed by the cult using a type of flower similar to that of the henbane flower. The drug causes the user to enter into a state of, well, pleasure and bliss, where they experience severe hallucinations. While in a bliss-induced states, followers are incredibly susceptible to suggestion. These suggestions are so powerful they can even take effect after someone is off the influence of bliss.
I'll speak your language. And when their blood is on your hands,
And when their blood is on your hands,
we'll see how heroic you feel.
see how heroic you feel.
What are you doing?
I'm sorry to have to do this.
I'm sorry to have to do this.
I wanted there to be another way.
I wanted there to be another way.
But you made your choice.
But you made your choice.
Who opened the doors?
Oh shit! They're inside!
I told you. I didn't want to leave.
Through faith, the cult has poisoned almost everything in Hope County with the bliss. The water, the animals, even the soil has been laced with bliss to a certain degree. This is now not just a sin against God, but nature as well, as many of the animals corrupted by bliss go on a rampage outside of the cult's control. These are the so-called judges, not to be confused with the wolf judges. Yeah, it makes sense in context. Anyway, the worst part of the bliss is what it does to those who are overexposed to it. These are the cult's angels. They are individuals who have been force-fed bliss so often their minds are all but destroyed, leaving them as only walking automatons for the cult's purpose. Think of them like the servitors from 40K. They are the sad chattel cast to do the cult's bidding. To any who faith captures, this is their fate. Needless to say, this is disgusting in the eyes of God. 1 Corinthians 6:19 through 20. Or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price, so glorify God in your body. As Paul said in the Christian faith, our bodies are temples, which is why substance abuse is considered sinful. And the fact that the cult would so willingly desecrate these temples and rob mankind of its very free will is nothing less than an abomination. It is fitting then that Faith should meet her end, hoping her drugs could save her and her schemes, only for reality to break through and win the day, as it always will with drugs.
You still don't understand. You don't know what it is you're doing, do you?
Sweetie, I know exactly what I'm doing.
Joseph believes he's our savior. But you'll be the one who decides what happens.
So you're finally gonna see that he's wrong?
You were the start. You'll be the end.
Hey, don't touch me.
It was always gonna happen this way.
Heretics do follow a predictable pattern.
You'll walk the path. You'll rescue your sheriff. You'll be the hero.
Not to brag, but yeah.
And then you'll choose.
No, he's wrong regardless of what I do. Oh yeah, just tune me out and the rest of the world. That's just like you. Alright, anyway, it's time to delve into PTSD. Let's take a look at Jacob, the oldest.
For the time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear. They will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to myths.
Jacob is the head of the cult's armed forces, fitting since he served with the U.S. Army Airborne after he was separated from his brothers. While in the military, he served several years in the Middle East, even at one point getting lost in the desert with one of his buddies. After several days, they ran out of food and water. Realizing that they weren't going to make it on the rations they had, Jacob killed and cannibalized his buddy to survive. To the surprise of no one, Jacob developed PTSD from his time in the military and was discharged to a military hospital, where, as soon as he ran out of funds, he was booted into a homeless shelter. It was there that Joseph and Jacob found him and brought him into the cult to lead the cult's military. It was also here that Jacob developed his philosophy on life and humanity. Surprise, surprise, it's just a watered-down version of what Horkos and Astria are spitting out, but just not as engaging. I'll explain. So, stop me if this sounds familiar. The world has lost its edge, and it's because the weak are in charge. The weak need to be sacrificed for the strong, and the herd must be culled.
The world is weak. Soft. We have forgotten what it is to be strong. You know, our heroes used to be gods. And now our heroes are godless. Weak. Feeble, diseased. We let the weak dictate to the powerful, and then we are shocked to find ourselves adrift. But history knows the value of sacrifice, of culling the herd so that it stays strong. Over and over, the lives of the many have outweighed the lives of the few. This is how we survived. And we've forgotten. And now, the bill has come due. Now, the collapse is upon us. And this time, the lives lives of the few outweigh the lives of the many. And when a nation that's never known hunger or desperation descends into madness, we'll be ready.
Oh, by the way, he also has a thing about wolves.
Buddy, you think you look strong? You're just a cheap fucking knockoff.
I feel like Ubisoft likes to recycle plot narratives. I know. Surprising, isn't it? Anyway, honestly, I might find the philosophy of Jacob more interesting if I knew it wasn't taken out of serious PTSD. The way I see it, his whole philosophy is his justification for his actions in the Middle East. What he did to his best friend wasn't wrong. No. It was only natural. He was weak, and I was strong. I did what I had to survive, right? This is just a form of Darwinism. See, to me, Jacob just seems like a man trying to cope with his own sins by justifying them. This also is shown in his recruitment process. When he captures people he thinks could be useful, he puts them through trials. These trials involve all things Jacob had to go through in the Middle East, including starving people for days on end. He claims that this is to revert them to their natural state, and to a degree it might be. But I believe it's more than that. I believe it's to convince himself what he did in the Middle East to his friend was justified. After all, if these people are put in the same circumstances, and they do what I did, or even worse, my own actions must be natural. Right? But don't worry. Jacob's plan has other methods of stupid to them. Jacob enjoys taking the toughest of his enemies and conditioning them to do his bidding, which might be more impressive if he wasn't a moron. See, he actually even successfully gets you, the player, to be so psychologically conditioned, you wind up killing the leader of the white-tailed militia. And there's the problem, though. You see, in order to condition you successfully, he needs to catch you at least 3 times to condition you. But in between the times he captures you, you blow up like 90% of his stuff. So, yeah, you get me to kill Eli. That's great. But I've also burned down your entire operation. So, that's 1 for you. I lost count on how many of your guys I killed. I'm not going to lie. You're not going to be able to replace those numbers that easily. You're an idiot. Here's an idea. Instead of using the conditioning to have me kill Eli, why don't you use the conditioning to have me show you where the bunker is, and so you can kill him yourself without me, giving grievous casualties to all your men, because I'm kind of a nightmare by the time I get to you, Jacob. Or is this part of your sacrifice thing you won't shut up about? Seriously, when you complete your trials, you have to sacrifice something to show your willingness to serve the Father. Like a child or a spouse. Good Lord, man. PTSD aside, you're evil. To top off this nonsense, Jacob doesn't even believe in Joseph. He just thinks that the world is collapsing and decided to be Astria Light. Yeah, you're gonna get what's coming to you.
My brother saw all this coming.
Yeah, dude, it's not exactly hard to predict a violent response when you start committing crimes against humanity.
I don't know if he talks to God.
It kinda does, because if he's wrong, you've been doing crimes for no reason.
That doesn't matter. He was right.
Except for the part where he wasn't.
Humanity is once again in crisis.
Nothing new then.
It doesn't matter what we build or achieve. We will always find a way to break it down.
So you admit that what you did was pointless?
Babylon, Rome, empires rise, empires fall. America, we're no different.
Never heard of reforming, have you?
We think we're indestructible. World War II, War on Terror. We survived it, but it only brought us closer to the edge, and this is where we are.
Could you and your siblings please be less vague on your signs of the end times? I could literally pick any time in history and your description would still fit.
Right here, on schedule, just waiting for someone to push us. And oh boy, if you pushed us.
Excuse me? I'm not the one who started kidnapping and torturing people. Your family can't use the Geneva Convention as a personal checklist and then act surprised when people fight back.
You did everything he said you would do.
He told you I would befriend a grizzly bear and style on you morons with a shovel?
And you didn't even know it.
Joke's on you, I already read the script. I knew exactly what was going on. Final word, Jacob. Blessed are the weak, for they shall inherit the earth. Matthew 5:5. Now, the one you've all been waiting for. The piece de resistance. The head heretic, Joseph.
A horrible and shocking thing has happened in the land. The prophets prophesy lies. The priests rule by their own authority, and my people love it this way. But what will you do in the end?
Oh, you poor deluded man. Where to begin with you? The self-proclaimed prophet of God. Joseph is an interesting case and easily the most twisted. He may preach forgiveness and mercy, but only to the point of pleasing himself and his goals. Joseph wants one thing. He wants a peaceful life where his congregation and his family live happily and above all else, revere him. And that's what this is all about. Joseph needs to be revered. It is a psychological want. He needs to be the father. He needs to be in control, and he will sacrifice everything to get that desire. The delirium-induced visions he believed are from God just feed into his megalomania. That's right. Even in the in-game lore, Joseph Seed is not a prophet and has never even been in contact with God. That's a bold claim, but here's my evidence. Let's look at his action towards the end of the game. When all of his siblings are killed and his cult is pretty much destroyed, Joseph loses his composure. He weeps at the loss of his family. One might even call it wailing and gnashing of teeth. At the loss of his family, he admits he thought he understood God's plan, but was blind. Only now does he see.
Another seal has been opened. My family, my brothers, my sisters, they've been taken from me by a snake in the garden! I thought I knew God's plan. But I was wrong. I was blind. But now I see. You took my family from me so that I could have yours. We will welcome them with open arms. Just as we will welcome you. We will be waiting for you. Where it all began.
It is at this point he no longer cares about his supposed connection to God. It doesn't matter. He will have what he wants regardless of whether it is ordained or not. Joseph wants a flock. He wants to be the father. He wants to be in control. So he finds your friends that you've made throughout the game, and he uses Bliss to mind control them into his new flock. He then gives you a choice to leave him with his new flock or die. If you leave with your cop friends, there is no apocalypse, but if you choose to resist, you will beat Joseph and save your friends. And suddenly, nukes start flying.
Lightnings and an earthquake.
Joseph Seed, you're under arrest.
And I heard a great voice from the temple say to the angels, "Go your ways, and pour from the vials the wrath of God upon the earth."
Joseph happily exclaims he was right at this, and then the collapse is your fault.
Your friends have been taken and tortured, and it's your fault. Countless people have been killed, and it is your fault. The world is on fire, and it's your fault.
Don't worry though, it's not. It's actually all on him, but in a little bit. See, here's the thing. Remember, Joseph at the beginning of the game claimed that the collapse was coming after the helicopter crash, hence the reason he started reaping Hope County. So why at the end of the game does he act like he gave you a choice? Simple. He's the one behind the nukes. Throughout the game, we see that Joseph and his family are quite adept at mind control and manipulation. Their influence has also spread quite far, with one of the dispatchers even being a member of the cult.
Yes, Father. Praise be to you.
Even hardened federal agents like the Marshal can become brainwashed servants within short periods of time and even take commands at long distance. Also, thanks to everyone's least favorite CIA agent, we also know that the cult has peddled in blackmail on important officials before, so it's not out of the realm of possibility that Joseph has agents throughout the US or the world that are ready to start off a nuclear war on command. The fact that a nuclear war is dependent on the actions of a single deputy in Montana is too coincidental to be believed. Also, the fact that multiple nukes target the middle of nowhere in the conclusion of the game is also highly suspect. So much so that before the events of Far Cry New Dawn, several players were under the impression that the whole nuclear fallout thing was a Bliss-filled hallucination. Speaking of Far Cry New Dawn, Joseph actually admits he was wrong and that you need to kill him because he considers himself a monster now. He describes his soul as a cancer.
I thought I understood God's plan. I thought he wanted me to build a new Eden. But I am not his shepherd. You are. My soul has become a cancer. I am a monster. And I have only spread suffering and death in the name of God. My family is all ashes. And Eden is dust. And there is no redemption for this. No atonement. There is only the justice of God's hand. End this vicious cycle. Give me God's justice. Release me.
With that in context, it is incredibly likely that Joseph started off the apocalypse because you denied him his family and his new Eden. Without his congregation, he can't be the father, so why not torch it all? At the end of the game, when Joseph captures you in Dutch's bunker, he refuses to kill you because you are all he has left.
I prepared my family for this moment. And you took them from me. I should kill you for what you've done. But you're all I have left now. You're my family. And when the world is ready to be born anew, we will step into the light. I am your father. And you are my child. And together we will march to Eden's gate.
As long as there is still one person left alive he can manipulate, he can still be the father, and he has to be the father. To summarize, Joseph planned on harvesting Hope County's resources and people into bunkers to start the apocalypse and come out after the fallout with his congregation to rebuild him as the architect of New Eden. However, the deputy's resistance to the cult was far stronger and far more successful than Joseph anticipated, which drew his plans into doubt. So he scrapped the idea and just decided to rebuild his congregation from the ground up and hope that Rook would take the deal and leave, so he could still have something. When Rook refused because, well, we're sick of his heresy, Joseph said screw it and ordered the apocalypse anyway. If Joseph can't live in a world in which he is the father, why have a world at all? Only for the deputy to take Joseph to Dutch's bunker, where he and the deputy survive. He then realizes that in a twisted way, he was sorta kinda right, and he now has a chance to have his own congregation, again albeit much smaller after the end of a self-fulfilling prophecy. But at least he still gets to be the father. Fitting enough, though, his story will end in the sequel, realizing that everything he did was wrong and that he did evil in God's name. An appropriate end for a false prophet. So here's the question. How do we fix Eden's Gate? The obvious one is to read the Bible and not become psychopaths. But there may be a few of you out there trying to start your own cults. So let's try and fix the gate, but keep the cult. First off, Joseph needs new leadership. His siblings are too broken to be effective leaders. In Far Cry 6's DLC, it's revealed that if Joseph's plan had worked perfectly, all of his siblings would have eventually turned on him. We're going to need to pick better, more psychologically stable leaders. Next, no Bliss. It is a waste of resources. One of the things that you realize in the DLC is that things start going south because you run out of both Bliss oil and food. Because of this, they can't control their followers, especially Faith, who is addicted to the stuff. So scrap it all together. Because one of the things you realize when you start traveling around Hope County is that a good chunk of land the cult acquired is dedicated purely to growing this one flower, just so it can be processed into a drug. It would be better use to have that land that you acquired to grow food, particularly food that is easy to store for long-term preservation in case of a Fallout-style scenario. After you handle your food problem, clean up yourself. You all look like homeless people. You guys all look unhinged. I mean, to be fair, you are, but you don't want to scare off potential converts or unnerve the locals. Take a look at the Mormons, the Jehovah's Witnesses. See, those cults can dress nice. If they can dress nice, so can you. Finally, don't piss off the locals, and get in their good graces if you can, to the point where they say, I don't agree with everything they say, but they sure are friendly. Help out the community, do outreach programs. This will up your recruitment and keep the civilians off your back. Plus, if you let people know, hey, we have multiple bunkers in the mountains that we are willing to open for your use in case something happens, please, if the sirens go off, do not hesitate to come to us for help. This will make you seem like a benevolent people who are actually trying to help, and should the apocalypse kick off, whether you cause it or not, the people you saved will see you as prophets, and thus you can count on their support in building your new utopia, or at least they will stay out of your way. Or you could do the easiest option and just break out Joseph Seed's mixtape. Unironically, the cult's music in the game is very, very good. Keep Your Rifle by Your Side is a banger, and I'm tired of pretending it's not. But that's all just crazy talk, am I right? And that's also where we're going to end it for today. So what do you guys think? Am I right about Joseph Seed and his cult, or am I just as crazy as he is? Perhaps somewhere in between. I look forward to your hypotheses in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys.